after they go through all the stages of grief after a school shooting, wouldn't it be interesting if they form their own militia? So in the story, the parents, after all the stages of grief, they go and lobby Congress for stricter gun laws. And I've actually seen this on TV, where they're holding up pictures of their kids, of their deceased children, and legislators that are pro-gun just walk by, not even looking at them. So in this case, they had a meeting scheduled with the Speaker of the House, who controls what bills come up for a vote, and he walks right by. He won't meet with them. And just like that scene I described. And so they decide to form their own militia, and they take the Speaker of the House hostage, and they make him look at video of the shooting, morgue shots of the kids, until he agrees to bring safer gun legislation to the floor. And that's the basic premise of the book. It's about why do we have these 27 ambiguous words telling us what our gun policy should be when it has nothing to do with militias today? So basically what the parents did was throw the Second Amendment on its side and reinterpret it a little bit in a nonviolent way, actually, to their advantage. And that's the story. Of course, they get caught. They go to, they go to jail, some of them, and it ends up in the Supreme Court, and I won't tell you what happens there.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, the author podcast. Get to meet great authors from around the world and talk about some really interesting and very topical, timely things as well. And really excited to have Roger on the podcast today. We're going to be talking through his books. He's written many things for us to fall in love with. We're going to be talking about that today, and we're going to chat about his book and the stories behind it as well. It's so glad to have you on the show, Roger. Welcome to the podcast.
It's my pleasure indeed. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. I know we've already chatted a little bit. For those listening, Roger, where do you live? Where are you in this big world of ours?
I am in Connecticut, right on the Long Island Sound, and I love it. I'm sort of semi-retired, although I have my fingers in a lot of different pies, I guess. And it's not. I used to live, closer to New York City in Connecticut, but now I live a little further out, so I can be on the water, which is very nice and soothing. And even when there's a storm, it's fun to watch. So there you go.
Nice. And a little quieter, maybe, than getting too close to New York?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not commutable, really, unless you're really a slave for punishment. but it's, I like Connecticut. I'm originally from New Jersey. I'm very proud to consider myself a New Jerseyan for many reasons, but this is where I ended up after starting a family. So
you have a very interesting career too. You've worked with some pretty big companies and done some pretty amazing things in your past. Can you give us a little overview of something you've done outside of your writing?
Yeah, I got my MBA from Wharton way back when, and I was hired by Young and Rubicam, which was the largest advertising agency in the U.S. back then, not in the world. It no longer exists, but that's a different story. And I worked my way up to senior vice president. I introduced Advil back in 1984. I did the first commercial. I mean, I was head of the team that did the first commercial for Advil. I worked on TWA, which no longer exists, AT&T, Bell Atlantic, Verizon. We did the campaign that changed the name from Bell Atlantic to Verizon. USAA for a while, the Sports Authority, a lot of brands in a 25-year career in advertising, and I ended up president of a subsidiary of Young and Rubicam. We had about 80 people and beautiful offices in the East Village in Manhattan, so it was a lot of fun.
Can you take elements of your background and apply it to writing and promoting your book and marketing your book? Is there little pieces of what you have done in the past that you can kind of bring forward?
Well, yeah, I mean, in many ways, many from many perspectives, I guess is the way to put it. First of all, I was what they call a suit. Okay, I was an MBA, so I wasn't one of the creative team, but I started writing in high school, and then sort of when I got into business school and all that stuff, I went on hiatus from writing. But I always had the urge to do it. And one of the best things about, even though I wasn't a creative person in the ad agency, by osmosis I got it from some of these wonderful, I learned it from some of these wonderful people, the copywriters, the art directors, the creative directors, the producers, the video producers. And over time, I had the urge to write again. So, about 7 years into my career at Young and Rubicam, I started writing a screenplay. I was a film undergraduate for a while, so I always had an interest. And then, after doing that and finding out that it's very difficult to sell a screenplay, Um, I've seen pictures of offices of producers with stacks and stacks of screenplays on their desks. Um, I decided to write a novel, and I always had either it was an infatuation or a fear or some combination thereof of ghosts. And I wanted to know if they really. I talked to enough people who claim they saw a ghost and that I was curious. So I was to add to the story. I was very captivated by the book and the movie Contact by Carl Sagan. And the thesis behind that book, having seen him interviewed, was that if aliens do exist, what would it really be like? And since he was a scientist, he sort of knew. And if you saw the movie, you see how they communicate. But I wanted to write a ghost story. If ghosts really exist, what are they like? So I was living in Manhattan at the time, and it was before the internet, believe me. And I went to the New York City Public Library about 18 Saturdays in a row and read every book they had on parapsychology. And so I wrote this ghost story called Mean Spirits. Is about the Penfield family who came over on the Mayflower, but something untoward happened during the trip, and a young servant girl committed suicide, and she came back every other generation to haunt the Penfields. And that was the essence of Mean Spirits. And there was a ghost hunter in it who applied, even though it's a pseudoscience, he applied all the, parapsychological tests and all that stuff. So it was a fun book to write, and it did pretty well.
Nice.
And actually, it became the Halloween it came out, it was the number one ghost story on Amazon for a couple of days. I wouldn't, but it was number two was Stephen King, and he's sort of one of my heroes. So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay, so that was your first book then.
Yes. And then I started writing a book that was sort of a sequel, but not really, to Mean Spirits. It was about the future, the present trying to change the future, and the future trying to change the past. So I studied a lot about quantum physics and all the things related to that. And I had a hard time writing it because I never outline it ahead of time. So I sort of got caught in my underwear. But I had to put it down for a while because when the big economic meltdown in 2008 happened, I was running my own little agency, and I had the idea to write a book about how it happened and what it meant to baby boomers specifically. And the whole idea was to position my ad agency as experts on baby boomers. So the name of the book was Baby Boomer Bust: How the Generation of Promise Became the Generation of Panic. And it profiled different people across the economic spectrum, and how the meltdown affected them. But then finally, I finished my story about the past and about the present and the future interacting, and it was called Time Framed, and that got really good reviews.
Nice.
And it was 650 pages, believe it. I don't know how I finished it, but then I always had this idea. Well, I was always touched by school shootings. I just empathize with those parents. And now ask yourselves why. Why are we allowing things like this to happen in what's supposed to be a civilized society? So I lived about a half hour from Sandy Hook at the time. That day, I remember that day. It was December 14th, I think, 2012. I remember Obama coming on the air. I watched it live. Christmas was within 2 weeks after that. My daughter and I went up on Christmas Day and laid some flowers down at they had a little memorial in the middle of the downtown of Newtown. And then fast forward to Parkland and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
Yeah.
And I remember 3 or 4 days after the tragedy, there was this big public meeting. Thousands of people were there. It was in a big, like, basketball court, arena, whatever. And all the politicians were there. A woman from the NRA was there. A lot of the students were there, the faculty. And so they each spoke. I mean, Marco Rubio was one of the speakers. And during the Q&A, the history teacher got up and she asked the panel, what militia was that young man part of? And how was he well well trained? Actually, it's well regulated. Excuse me. I had
Yeah.
to, although I've written it so many times. So, the words, a well regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Those 27 words really are the umbrella which sort of hangs over gun policy in the United States. And I thought, well, yeah, what's this about a militia? And there's no militias. I mean, there's the army, there's the National Guard, but that wasn't what militia meant back in the late 1700s. And I said, a militia, one of the reasons the Second Amendment was passed, it was a compromise between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists were scared that a really strong federal government could become tyrannical, just like the king they were trying to get rid of. So
Right.
the citizens had the right to form militias in the event government became tyrannical, that and for other reasons. So I said, wouldn't it be cool if the parents, after they go through all the stages of grief after a school shooting, wouldn't it be interesting if they form their own militia? So in the story, the parents, after all the stages of grief, they go and lobby Congress for stricter gun laws. And I've actually seen this on TV, where they're holding up pictures of their kids, of their deceased children, and legislators that are pro-gun just walk by, not even looking at them. So in this case, they had a meeting scheduled with the Speaker of the House, who controls what bills come up for a vote, and he walks right by. he won't meet with you. And just like that scene I described.
Yeah.
And so they decide to form their own militia, and they take the Speaker of the House hostage, and they make him look at video of the shooting, morgue shots of the kids, until he agrees to bring safer gun legislation to the floor. And that's the basic premise of the book. It's about why do we have these 27 ambiguous words telling us what our gun policy should be when it has nothing to do with militias today? So basically what the parents did was throw the Second Amendment on its side and reinterpret it a little bit in a nonviolent way, actually,
Yeah.
to their advantage. And that's the story. Of course, they get caught. They go to, they go to jail, some of them, and it ends up in the Supreme Court. And I won't tell you what happens there.
It's interesting because I'm coming at this conversation from a Canadian perspective, and things are different up here than it is down where our friends and family in the U.S. When you look at other countries and how their policies are compared to the U.S., is there anything that you're envious of, or is there anything that you're just like, that's interesting that it's so different in that other country, and why is it not like that here in the U.S.?
Well, in the U.S., there's about 1.2 to 1.5 guns per capita. Okay, in most of Western Europe, there's about 0.6, so it's like 1/3. In the U.S., if you did that 1.2 to 1.5 was against the entire adult population. If you just look at gun owners, each owns between 4 and 5. Okay, so in the U.S., there's 5 to 6 homicides per 100,000 people a year. In Western Europe, there's about 1/2 of a homicide per. So, I mean, you don't need to do multiple regression to figure out the correlation. 1.5 guns per person versus 0.6, and 5 to 6 deaths per 100,000 versus like 0.6 again, so, or less than 1. So, I mean, there's definitely a correlation there. Why? And I've talked to a lot of gun owners, and I'm not against responsible gun ownership, but getting guns into the hands of people who are disturbed in some way. In the book, the young man that does the killing, he was bullied tragically by some of the jocks in his school. And since he was 18, he was able to buy a gun without a background check through what they call the gun show and private seller loophole. And he felt he was backed into a corner. He was embarrassed terribly, and peer pressure in high school and all that stuff. High school students can be vicious. And he saw that as his only way out. So someone like he should not be able to get firearms, particularly an AR-15, which, allows you to shoot very rapidly, even though, each time you clench the trigger, it's only one bullet, but you don't have to reload. So, so we've seen, I mean, in the last month, look at what we've seen in Minnesota, the Catholic school, kids during Mass. Also in Minnesota, the politicians, just last week, Charlie Kirk, all gun violence. And unfortunately, we haven't learned from our northern neighbors that you don't need that many guns in circulation to have a functioning and productive society.
Where do you find a balance point then from your perspective? What makes sense to you when this doesn't make sense currently?
Well, I think you have to get rid of the private seller and gun show loopholes because it allows people to get a gun without a background check.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It differs state by state, but right now in the state of Ohio, where this takes place, Brushy Ridge, Ohio, um, an 18-year-old can buy a rifle, including a semi-automatic rifle. Perhaps we should move that to 21. There should be a background check. You should be required to take gun safety courses. You don't have to now. Maybe in some states, but not all. Probably the majority you don't have to. Maybe you should also have to buy gun insurance, like people buy car insurance, in case you do any damage. So these are common sense things that you can do that wouldn't compromise the hunter's right to hunt or a responsible gun owner from owning a gun, either for self-defense or because they like to shoot. Okay, it's a sport for some people. So, but they're very adamant. They think if they give an inch, they'll be giving a mile. But that's really not. I just want common sense, I think, and that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, and I think that whole idea around background checks, that's good, but it's only what's been reported. We
Yeah.
don't know what hasn't been reported, and we don't know what happened in the last 5 minutes because that's not going to show up on any background check,
I mean,
right?
in many ways, you don't know what's going on in the mind of a kid.
Exactly.
You don't. I mean, think about it. When you go through puberty and through the teen years, all sorts of thoughts are swimming around in your head, and you really can't tell. But you can bring it down. You can't eliminate it, the school shootings, but you can bring it down. And some common sense regulations would do that. And I don't know why I do know why we get such a strenuous response from the other side because they think if they think you're playing a game of chicken. And you give me a little bit and then you're going to come back next year and ask for more and more and more. And to a certain extent, that might have some validity to it, but the way we have it now, I think is unacceptable to families, to parents who want to leave their kid at school in the morning and
Right.
all day what might be happening. I mean, to us, when we hear about a school shooting, to you and me, it's in the news. We're detached. It's like watching a movie on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
3 days later, the news cycle has moved on. To them,
Yeah.
when they get that phone call, it's
Right.
unbearable. It's tragic. It's life shattering. And what I try to do in the book is, demonstrate what these parents had been going through. Understand that they lost the most precious thing you can have, a child. And put the reader in the situation where even though what they did, forming a militia, was probably wrong and taking the chairman hostage, understanding sort of they're in a rock and a hard place because
Right.
it's when grief meets helplessness. And a
Yeah.
lot of people in America today feel helpless to effectuate change. And, Congress doesn't help. And that's both sides of the aisle.
It's very frustrating for parents
Yeah.
and family
Yeah.
members, teachers even, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
the one
it's
thing
not
that
the,
yeah,
go ahead. You go ahead.
I pick up on like news from the US here in Canada and just the shooting drills that happen in schools to prepare kids for a potential, you know, active shooter on campus. And I'm like, I don't remember that as part of my day to day growing up here in Canada that we ever had that. We had fire drills to get outside.
Yeah.
That's about it. But I can't imagine that just hanging over a student, even a young student, a child,
Yeah.
having to be prepared and know how to protect themselves. That like, where did
Yeah.
our innocence go? In all of
Well,
it?
I teach at a local community. Well, it's not at a local college,
Yeah,
and I had to go through that.
right.
So So yeah, it's you have to question how did we get here? But and one of the storylines of the book is when those 27 words were written in, what was it, 1787, I think. Um, Life was a lot different back then. You had
Right.
outhouses, cisterns, and basically everyone ignores the first, what is called the prefatory clause, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Everyone seems to ignore that and just focus on the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Right.
So it was written that way for a reason. And, there are people in America, legal scholars, who are called originalists, and they say that the way to interpret the Constitution and Bill of Rights is what they meant to the people in the street, to the normal people at the time they were written. And at the time they were written, people could form militias, so, but that sort of atrophied away, I guess, over time.
Okay. So that's the original origin of it. Again, I'm coming from a Canadian perspective here, so I
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
be
Well, again,
educated.
there were the Federalists. I think
Yeah.
Alexander Hamilton was one, and I think the Anti-Federalists. I think Jefferson was one. And the Federalists wanted a very strong federal government, and the Anti-Federalists wanted stronger state governments and just a loose federal government, and it was a
Right.
compromise. You
Okay.
can form a militia in case the federal government becomes tyrannical. So, yeah. I don't know
Hmm.
what. I don't even know if Canada has something like the Second Amendment,
Doesn't come to
but
mind in that
I know
context. Yeah.
I know gun violence is a lot less
Yeah.
in Canada, and that's one of, I think, I think Canadians are more reasonable than Americans in many ways and more respectful of other people's rights. But that's a generalization, so I don't
Yeah.
know. But
The other part of the story that I think your book taps into is the fact that we have access to seeing what's happening in the world at a
yeah,
greater extent now through news, through the
sure.
availability of the internet, everything. It's real in real time, right? And I think that's a big difference than like 20, 30, 40 years ago. We're seeing
Yeah,
things as it happens, right?
yeah, and think about what happened last week.
Yeah.
It's all over the internet, and I didn't see the full, but it's very graphic.
Right.
And, but still, a lot of people seem to like retrench instead of say, it's about time we do something. So,
What is your hope for the book? What is the finish line you're hoping a reader's going to get to through the book? Do you have an underlying thread you're trying to pull on?
well, one of the themes in the book, which I didn't really talk about here, was civil disobedience. Sometimes, particularly when the government is deadlocked, like it is here, the only way to get something done is through civil disobedience. Martin Luther King used civil disobedience. Rosa Parks, when she sat in the front of that bus,
Right.
she was breaking the law. But you know what? That civil disobedience resulted ultimately in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So
Right.
sometimes you have to stand up for your rights, for what you think is right. And you may have to be, I mean, Martin Luther King was in jail. I think Rosa Parks was put in jail, at least for a small amount of time. So, and in this story, the parents go to jail, some of them. So, yeah, I mean, I hope that people sort of come to the realization that something has to be done, and sometimes you have to stand up for what you think is right.
Yeah, the idea, again, of taking your kids to a school that's a safe place and then going off to work and your kids are safe, you know they're fine. And then just having that fear that, what
Yeah,
if? Right. I don't know.
probably.
I'm a parent. I don't know how I would handle that.
Yeah, I mean, luckily when my daughter was that age, it wasn't that big a thing.
Right.
But now you hear about one, probably once a month, and the last month has been terrible.
Right.
you know, last month and a half. Not only school shootings, but just violence. And yeah, something should be done. Something has to be done. But when and if it gets done is still to be determined, I guess. So
How does it get better?
through people like the parents of Brushy Ridge standing up and
Right.
saying, we're not going to take this anymore. And I mean, those are nice words to say, but you have to have action behind them. And I'm not saying start a civil war, but just like Rosa Parks is a great example. Just like what she did, she thought it was right, that she thought it was so wrong that black people couldn't sit at the front of the bus, that
Hmm.
she broke the law. And we have to come to some sort of we have to make it clear that the people who want safer gun laws are really serious about it, because it's not just for them, it's for their children and all of our children and grandchildren. And do we really want them to grow up in a country where you have to be nervous every time you leave them off to
Right.
school? So,
Yeah. And the one thing I pick up on too, as well, from a Canadian perspective, is the division in the U.S. around gun laws and how adamant people are for or against. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground, it seems like, in the news. So, like, where do we go there? Like, how do
yeah.
we navigate that part of the discussion?
Well, I think there is like a soft middle. I have
Okay.
a lot of friends, not a lot, but few, who have guns. One of them was a single woman who lived by herself, and she had it, in her night table in case someone came into her house.
Yeah.
Another one, she has a gun, but if you talk to these people about, people getting guns who shouldn't have them, they agree. But
Right.
yes, there are very hardcore advocates too. And they live mostly, well, they live in every state, but higher proportion in the red states.
Yeah.
And if they're hunters, all the power to them. I don't necessarily want to go out and shoot Bambi's mom,
Right.
but if they want to do it, I have other things I like to do. But if they want to do it, fine, all the power to them. So we have to find, the right to self-defense is a very strong right. I mean, no one should be in a position where they can't defend themselves if that's what they want.
Right.
But there are people. I mean, a friend of mine has a nephew who has 18 semi-automatic rifles. Do you
Whoa.
really need any? You can only shoot one at a time, you know? Um, and yeah, I mean, yeah. And the thing is, and I think this is very true. I mean, based on things that I've read, if there's a gun in your house, even if you have it in your top bedroom drawer, just in case, you're more likely to use it on yourself or on a person close to you. Just it's like, the drunk uncle comes over for Thanksgiving, and if he has a gun and he disagrees with
Yeah.
you, vice
Yeah.
versa, that could happen. So it escalates what could be just a nasty argument into something fatal. So, yeah, I mean, I think we have to, I think we have to come up with a compromise that allows responsible gun owners to own guns responsibly, but also to keep it away from
Yeah.
people who, it's funny because every once in a while I see a sticker on a car that says, if guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns, which of course is true. But if
Right.
murder is outlawed, only murderers, only outlaws will murder, I
Mm.
mean, you take it to the absurd. If ice cream is outlawed, only outlaws will eat ice cream. So
Hmm.
like that's
Right.
sort of a circular argument. And yeah, I have to admit, in the US, it would, with all the existing guns that are out there, it would take a long time. But you can't not have a law because people argue it's unenforceable. You have to do what you think is right, what's right for
Hmm.
society. They got it right. So
Yeah.
uh, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the mental health part of it. You talked about a bullied teenager, kid, then picking up a gun and doing what they did because of how they were treated and all the bullying they went through. It seems like we let them down in that part of their life, and
Oh
their
yeah,
answer was to go down that path, right?
one of the book's gotten great reviews, and
Yeah.
one of the reviews, several of them said you could almost feel for this kid Austin McGurk
Hmm.
because he wasn't bullied and he didn't have easy access to a gun. It might have just been another stage in his life that he was going through.
Yeah.
And
Right.
15 years later, he might have been a productive member of society doing something productive.
Right.
So, yeah, so there are a lot of moral dilemmas. But, when you're a teenager, particularly in the case of Austin, and you're getting bullied, and the quarterback of the football team is making fun of you and bullying you in the locker room. Yeah, I mean, your mind is very black and white. You have to get
Right.
out of this.
It's
So
all in that moment. It's a loss of power. It's a hit
yeah.
against your identity. So you're going to do something to repair that, or right?
How do you go back
We
to school the next day
no,
after
I know.
you know, notoriously bullied,
Right.
viciously?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go through that. And
Right.
they don't want to tell the powers that be in the school because there's a code of silence among the kids and they'll only get bullied more. So it's not as simple as it seems. If this kid
Right.
wasn't bullied, it never would have happened.
Yeah.
Is the bully somewhat responsible? I think so, but
It's interesting.
that for someone else to decide, I guess.
Right. Well, Roger, are you going to keep writing with all the books you have? Are you going to keep following your journey as an author?
Yeah, right now I'm working on a screenplay that I put down when I was started working on this,
Yeah.
and hopefully I'll finish it someday, and I will be subjected to Hollywood rejection. But I guess I have a temperament for rejection. So yeah, someone asked me once, what did I major in college? And I said rejection. and I thought it was funny at the time. But
There you go.
yeah, I'll continue writing because it's what makes me happy. It's what calms me down. It's what I'm always thinking about, even when I'm not writing. What this character should do, what that character should do, and it's for me, it's pleasant. So why
Hmm.
not?
Excellent. I love that you're writing something that has significance for the world right now, for sure, 100%. And that parents, people that are affected by this, people in community who maybe brought flowers to honor victims but weren't directly impacted, you're indirectly impacted. I think we all are impacted by this kind of violence. And I think for those people that might be listening who are struggling and you think that this is your only way to remedy your situation, there's probably a better way to remedy things. And right. So reach out for help, ask an expert, reach out to someone that you trust. That would be my kind of closing thought for anyone listening that's struggling. And because the impact just continues on and on and on into the future for these families. Yeah,
I can't agree more.
Right. And maybe don't kidnap somebody from the courts. Don't do any of that. Don't do that. That's not a good idea. But no, yeah.
Oh,
I understand.
It makes sort of taking it to the extreme, but it makes a point. So
it does make a point. It's amazing. Roger, I'm on your website while we're chatting. It's a beautiful website. By the way, I see there's an option to download a free chapter 1 for free. That's interesting. Can you tell us what your website? Yeah, tell us about your website.
It's brushyridgemilitia.com. So it's the name of the book without the. So brushyridgemilitia.com, and it'll take you right there. And all the reviews are there, which we're very proud of. A summary is there. You can download the chapter. You could also, there's a click to it on Amazon as well.
Yeah, I was watching your video of you talking about the book on your website as well. Excellent. Really enjoyed that as well. So a great website, Roger. We'll send everybody there as well. Any closing thoughts as we head towards the door, Roger, for the listener? Around the book, around your writings, anything you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I would love people to read the book, and thank you for having me on. And all I can say is both as a writer and as a person, pursue your passions. Life is too short not to pursue them. So that's what I have to say.
Excellent. Roger, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate you being here.
Again, thank you.
Excellent. Everyone, all the information is always in the show notes. I know Roger would love to hear your feedback. He mentioned earlier that he loves to read these reviews. When you buy his books, please leave a great review, because I know Roger would love to hear your comments. It's very encouraging for him as an author and as a writer to hear back from you, and you share your words back with him. So please do that when you buy his books. Leave that great review. Again, Roger, thank you so much for being on the show. Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.